Hey scholars, this is a video to explain the informative speech assignment. So I mentioned this in class, and this is the video that where I'm going to explain everything in detail. Okay, so as I mentioned in class, your informative speech is going to be about either an object or a health condition. So those are your two options, either an object or health condition. I explained this in class. The textbook in chapter 16, the chapter on informative speaking, chapter 16 explains all those. Please be sure you've read through that chapter to understand the nature of informative speaking. Um, the first thing that you need to do is to submit 3 potential speech topics to Canvas. So that's an assignment that's available in Canvas. That's due by Sunday, 3/24, March 24th. So basically what you're going to do is provide 3 sample topics, follow the format. I mean, look at the details in the Canvas module for the potential speech topic assignment. And you have 3 options that all do with, that all have to do with an object, or 3 options that are all on a medical condition, or your choice. But you list them in order of preference. Your first choice, second choice, third choice. Follow the directions on there where you list the topic. Provide a reason why you're thinking of that topic and a specific purpose statement that you would use for that particular speech assignment. And then I'll give you feedback. The final outline is due on Sunday, 4/14. So this is not till several weeks away. The speech outline is worth 30 points, but the oral presentation is worth 120 points. So a far more significant number more points, more points for the oral presentation than the outline. But the outline is imperative, as I talked about in class. So you have to have at least 4 sources, and the sources have to be scholarly sources that either come from a book, like a scholarly book, a journal, a magazine, or newspaper. So no website sources, no internet sources. Um, yeah, those are your options. So books, journals, magazines, or newspapers. You will find that in on the either in the physical library in the Pollock Library, or utilizing the Pollock Library's website. We've gone over that in class, how to utilize the Pollock Library website, the databases, how to find articles, how to get good information. So we've talked about that quite a lot in class. So you include those in the outline, but then obviously you include those as oral citations within the speech. I'll give you an example here in this assignment document. Also, I provided some examples of oral citations on Canvas. Make sure you read through those to get an idea and understanding of what that looks like. When you're speaking, you're only allowed to have one index card. So the only thing that you'll have up on stage with you is one single index card, either a 4x6 or a 5x8. This is a 4x6, and then 5x8 is a little bit bigger. You're not going to get in trouble if you use a 3x5, but you're only allowed one index card, so you might as well go for a bigger one. The idea is that you only use that for reference. Like, don't be writing out your speech word for word, writing really small, because if you do that, as I mentioned in class, I might just stop you. I might just say, hey, let's just stop the speech because you're just reading your speech word for word. Or if there's an excessive reliance on the index card where you're not engaging eye contact with the audience, then that's going to definitely lower your score. Sometimes significantly. Sometimes students will give a speech where they have very little eye contact with the audience, and it has a dramatic decrease on their score, on their grade. So what you'll do is, as soon as you finish speaking, you'll hand me the index card, and then you'll have a seat. So the speech needs to be at least 4 minutes, no more than 6 minutes. So the goal time for a speech like this, you're advised to go for a goal time of 5 minutes. That's the goal time. And that way, if you go a little too fast, or if you go a little too long or a little too short, you're going to be fine. There are point deductions associated with either not meeting the time requirement or exceeding the time requirement, and that's explained on the last page of the assignment document. One thing I mentioned here is when you're rehearsing from home, whatever day your speech is, you want to plan very strategically how you're rehearsing for your speech and getting ready for a speech. I mean, this is a performance. That's what I talked about, class. This is a performance-based activity. Giving a speech is a performance, so you have that date in mind. You'll have your speech date far in advance, and when you have that date in mind, like, you need to plan your schedule around that date, doing everything you can to prepare yourself adequately for that date. If you're not in class on the day of your assigned speaking date, you'll in all likelihood you will not have an opportunity to make it up, and then you get a zero, and that's not good. When you're rehearsing by yourself, it's really important to rehearse in a way where you're simulating the public speaking environment as best as possible. So if you're at home, then stand up, right? Stand up in your bedroom, or maybe you use the living room or the kitchen or the garage, but find a place where you can stand and speak loudly using your public speaking voice. So sometimes that can be difficult to because of all the distractions that you might have in your house. If you have siblings or parents, or there's noises going on, it can be challenging. But nevertheless, as you're rehearsing, you might, ideally you should be rehearsing the speech. It might take 15, 20, 30 rehearsals before you get to the point where you feel really confident about the overall speech presentation. I mentioned that some students really like to have a timer in sight. When I'm rehearsing for a presentation, I like having a timer. I like looking at the timer, knowing how fast I'm going. And then every time I rehearse a presentation, I take note of the time. If it's not long enough, I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I need to do? I need to make it longer. If it's too long, then obviously I need to go back and cut things out. Having a speech that's too long is a good problem. If you rehearse your speech and you realize, oh my gosh, it's only 2 minutes, well, it indicates that there's not enough information in your speech. So try rehearsing your speech with and without a timer. When you're actually giving your speech in our class, I provide the opportunity for students to use a timer. You bring a timer up with you on the front of the class, and you can look at it, and that way, you know where you're at with time. If you don't do that, I will give you time signals in class to let you know where you are with the time. The outline is a full content outline, preparation outline. The blueprint needs to be used. You need to write it using complete sentences, etc. So we talked about this in class. Chapter 14 details the outlining process, explains it in detail. There's a sample outline within the chapter, and then on Canvas there's sample outlines. So a good way to kind of like wrap your head around the nature of writing a speech outline is looking at other samples. Obviously, you have to do the reading, you got to do the work, but looking at sample outlines can be really useful. Make sure you're using a consistent professional method of numbering, Roman numerals, and so on and so forth. You got to label all your transitions, label introduction, body, conclusion, your specific purpose statement, central idea, give your speech a title, all that stuff. Talked about all that in class. I mentioned there's no specific page length requirement, but most outlines for this kind of assignment are going to be around 3 pages, depending on your spacing and how you write. 3 pages is sort of a rough, if it's like double space, or not double space. It's just, don't worry so much about the length. What's most important is that you're just doing the assignment, that you're following the instructions, and then of course you have to include a bibliography. Failing to include a bibliography and or failing to include in-text citations in the outline constitutes plagiarism, and that's not good. Will definitely have an impact on your grade. Failing to include in-text citations for the outline and or failing to include the bibliography is definitely going to reduce the score, and it would is on getting on the verge of plagiarism. So I have a sample here on the history of worlds, the hidden world of chili peppers. This is just a sample of what the beginning part of your outline might look like, where you have your name, you have the title, your specific purpose statement, central idea, and then that first part is the introduction. It's an outline of your introduction. Doesn't have to be exactly word for word, but it's an outline of the introduction. And then after that, that's finished. The introduction finished. The next part would be the body, main point 1, and then transition, and then main point 2, transition, main point 3, transition, and then the conclusion. And after the conclusion, you got the bibliography. So I give you some tips there about things to be mindful of. And then I have a box of kind of like reminders: the time, the dress, the index card, the research outline, visual aid, rehearsal. No visual aid is required. And in terms of the dress, I say business casual attire that you would wear on an interview. That's more of a recommendation. You don't have to dress up for this. You don't have to wear anything formal. You're not being graded on how you dress. I always encourage students to dress up in a way that makes you feel dressed up. Research shows that when you're dressed up, it changes the perception that you have of yourself. Recall the TED Talk that we watched about body language and power posing, all that kind of stuff. All that research is all in line with the way you look and how you carry yourself affects how you feel, affects like your body producing positive hormones and reducing stress hormones. You don't have to wear a suit and tie. You don't have to look super formal or fancy, but you're encouraged to dress up in a way that makes you feel dressed up, but it has no impact on your grade. And then the rehearsal, I say here, it's expected to guarantee an enthusiastic, polished delivery. Um, your speech should come off. It should be easy. When you wake up on the day of your assigned speaking date, there should be no more thinking of like, oh my gosh, I gotta get ready for the speech. You need to be strategic and rehearsing your speech multiple days in advance, not like a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, but at least a few days prior to your speech date. A few days prior, you should be completely finished with all the research, all the outline, all the written stuff. And now it's just a focus of, all right, now I got to rehearse my speech. Don't do it in one block of like a 4 hour block or a 5 hour block, but set up small blocks of time throughout each day. Let's say you take 3 days of rehearsals. In theory, let's say if you're going to give a speech on a Monday night, well, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Block out block out little sections of time on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday where you rehearse your speech a few times. You rehearse your speech maybe 3-4 times and then done in the morning, 3 or 4 times in the afternoon, 3 or 4 times in the evening. But schedule those blocks of time, and then throughout the day, be thinking about your speech. So you can be thinking about your speech as you're driving in your car, or as you're with your friends, as you're out to dinner. Be thinking about the way you're going to be engaging with the audience and interacting with the audience and whatnot. Practice your storytelling of let's say the introduction, specifically the attention getter. You can be practicing the way that you're going to deliver that, the way that you're going to start off, how you're going to use your voice and your body and all that kind of stuff. Basically, practice makes perfect. Not perfect, but practice makes good. And then I have this grading rubric for the presentation. Make sure this is the last page of the assignment document. Make sure you read through this. You're encouraged to read through this. Go through all these different components, all these different points, because this is the way that you're graded. The way I'm grading you is holistic, right? As I talked about in class, if you've read the grading philosophy PowerPoint and watched the video that goes with that on our Canvas page, gradings are like pancakes. I've mentioned that several times. I grade holistically. So looking through this grading rubric, this is the way that I'm grading. I look at the big picture. And then I assign the grade of A, B, C, D, or F, or 0 if you don't do it. Yeah, the more familiar you get with the grading rubric, the better you understand like what I'm doing and how I'm evaluating your performance. So that's the overview of the informative speech assignment and the topic, the first assignment, which is submitting your topic choices, and then all the other details I mentioned. Please be sure to ask questions in class. So if you have questions about this assignment, ask them in class. You can ask me directly, in person, or send me an email. But if you have questions about the assignment, make sure you ask them in class, because whatever questions that you have, chances are other students are also having the same questions, or at the very least, they'll benefit from whatever question that you ask in class. All right, that's it. Talk to you later. Bye.